Emblazoned across the COA t-shirts in the admissions office is the inscription, "Ask me about my major." While I don't sport one myself, it doesn't mean I am immune to that prickly question, human ecology? What's that? How the hell should I know? In other words, I still find myself formulating a succinct response to that probing interrogator, or to myself, about the meaning and relevance of human ecology. For me personally, the well of my inspiration, my canon, is studying global and public health. As a student tucked in the corner of the library with a stack of readings on medical anthropology and global health, I distinctly remember the day I discovered the work of Dr. Paul Farmer. I remember the way it changed my outlook on the world. I remember the goosebumps and the tears provoked by the passion of his justified indignation at the state of healthcare for the poor, his legitimate outrage over the inadequate, misguided, and self-serving responses of global communities, leaders, and aid organizations. I remember his charge that I, the reader, that you all, the audience, be aware of our role, our culpability in the status quo, where we stand in relation to others, to never ignore and never forget. I must confess that prior to that moment, I had never thought critically and meaningfully about who becomes sick and why, and who has access to healthcare and why. However, since then, and totally without his knowing it, Dr. Farmer has become one of my most cherished mentors as I try to understand and navigate this thing we call human ecology. For those less familiar with his work, the good doctor has spent the past 30 years on a mission to promote health equity in our world. Part physician, part anthropologist, part social advocate, and a founding member of the international nonprofit Partners in Health, Paul Farmer has pioneered ways to provide high-quality health care for the most vulnerable and deserving. In doing so, he tirelessly confronts the world with a simple truth that health and well-being are not commodifiable. They are a basic human right, essential to our local and global human ecologies. As a professor at Harvard, Dr. Farmer continues to inspire other generations of physicians and advocates to think fractally, looking at individual health not only as biological phenomena, but as the lived experience of social, political, and economic inequities. Yet, we cannot be satisfied by simply looking with proper perspective. We cannot be satisfied by simply observing in holistic fashion. We cannot be satisfied by simply reporting our findings. We must, in following Dr. Farmer's example, translate anger and love, compassion and indignation into direct action. Dr. Farmer has admitted that he's often perplexed when others have lavished him with awards, praising him as innovative. How can something so simple, so obvious, so just, so human, surprise others as innovative? I have often similarly wondered why others describe human ecology, describe COA as innovative. Rather, it is fundamental. Perhaps the answer is that there just aren't enough people doing it, but I have faith that each and every one of you can change that. Without further ado, it is my absolute honor and personal joy to introduce you to the good doctor, Dr. Paul Farmer.
Thank you. Well, in order to not get choked up, Maura, I'm going to have to make some joke very quickly. such as the first half of your introduction does also make me sound a little bit grumpy, which I'm not. But when I heard you say fractal, I thought somebody's reading that stuff I'm writing, so thank you. So hello out there, class of 2013. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this experiment, albeit a tardy one. And for reasons I will explore below, I just wish there were a lot more of you, a lot more like you, the marvelous 72. I understand enrollment is way up to over 100 next year. You see, someone's also watching your inane blogs, Darren. I'm kidding, they're great. This is all part of my recovery process from Maura's introduction. If this trend continues, there will soon be serious population problems on the island. For once, I feel, as the singer Bono did as he addressed Harvard's commencement, "I'm really nervous," he said, "because I've never before spoken in front of a crowd this small." There. Enough of you laughed for me to feel reassured that I have not gone in coming here through a time-space warp into a culture that I can only dimly understand. For you see, I do research about students and faculty before presuming to give a commencement speech. It's only polite. And among the tips about you received from interlocutors in Darren Collins' office were the following. You don't watch television, I was told. My daughter who's here said, no way. They definitely watch Game of Thrones. You don't much like cell phones or constant tweeting. You weren't likely, my informants continued, to show up today in Hogwarts robes, or at least not the standard ones. The following bit of advice is an exact quote, and I know who gave it to me. I won't embarrass her. Jokes about or references to pop culture may be lost on them. So the Bono line was a test and you passed. I will now strive to avoid being voted off the island. See, I told you, not true that they don't get popular culture references. I will strive to avoid being voted off the island while reflecting on human ecology as a physician anthropologist might. Now, I'm not here today to crack jokes about culture, whether popular or counter, but rather for the same reason all of you are. We're part of a complex web of connection, personal, intimate connection. But then again, Jesse already gave my speech. Where is he? Just as something and in fact someone brought you to Bar Harbor, something and someone's brought me here too. For you graduates, these connections got you here and paid your tuition and kept you from freezing to death and thus alive to learn. But it was surely the mission of this place, its insistent focus on human ecology, that made you want to come and to stay. A graduate student of mine at Harvard, informed Wednesday night that I hadn't yet written my speech, sent me the following from your website. College of the Atlantic is for idealists with elbow grease. For people who see the world as a complex, interconnected place. It's for people who want to make the world a better place. Now, it's a homespun formula, certainly, but also right in my wheelhouse, since I am forced to see the world as complex and interconnection, whether I'm in Haiti or Rwanda or at Harvard. And you don't need graduate degrees in medicine or anthropology to know it's so. A broad view of human ecology is a daunting one to adopt, and I'll share this also with the parents and family members who may not understand why this is such an important approach to take, as many in the world do not. And it's not because a clearer view of human affairs is possible without human ecology. It's not. But because we only tend to see a small part of the picture. When we get lost in the details, we lose something, and that something is, most often, a sound analysis of this complex world and how it got to be the way it is. That makes it hard for elbow grease to mean as much as it might, or to add up to more than the sum of our parts. You will, upon leaving this place, face frustration when you try to take lessons learned here at COA and apply them in your lives. I too have found this frustrating and complain about it as the scope of our work grows. All medical work is teamwork, and a global endeavor requires many, many partners to get things done. Think for just a minute, for example, what it would take to build a modern hospital, one rooted in a health system in rural central Haiti in the aftermath of a massive earthquake. Think what it would take to make that hospital solar-powered and to keep it open for the poor and sick and uninsured. Think what it would take to link such an effort to Harvard Medical School and its teaching hospitals. It can be done. Some of us have just come from precisely such a hospital, but it requires persistence and teamwork and partnerships only dimly imagined when, more than 25 years ago, we founded Partners in Health. Just this week, one of our colleagues, Cassia Holstein, suggested a new slogan for us, and I will adopt it as the title of this speech. Partner hard. Yeah, you can clap. I like that better than... Come on. Those of you who went to the senior party last night, wake up. It was, I'm told, to be chem-free. But how to mark today's achievement with a tribute to your engagement with human ecology and to beg you to partner hard. Since rigorous research conducted across time and culture shows that most people cannot remember a single word from graduation speeches. Got my fans back there. I will share a couple of stories about complexity and interconnection, tying them to the College of the Atlantic as a polite guest seeks to do. These stories, like all good narratives, are anything but random, to use my daughter's wry term, even though they will take us from Mount Desert, which, by the way, I can never quite pronounce correctly. I thought that's what we're having after graduation. To take us from Mount Desert to rural Mexico and Haiti and back to Maine, all in 20 minutes. Let's start with the news. I get mine, as do you all, from Stephen Colbert. On April 30th, as pre-graduation anxiety was setting in, still no speeches written, I listened as he told the tale of two comatose patients recently deported from a hospital in Iowa where they had been badly injured in a road accident to a hospital in Mexico. I'd read similar stories before, but what struck me about this one is that it all occurred without any government involvement. Was this the extraordinary rendition by an American hospital of a couple of injured people in the care of that hospital? Said Colbert, "Deported is such a harsh word. The hospital simply moved them to the intensive we don't care unit." You should have gotten him as your speaker, clearly. This story seemed so outlandish, outrageous, that the next day I tried to look up the details. Colbert's source was an AP report published in the Washington Post on April 23rd. Jacinto Cruz and Jose Rodriguez Saldana, 2 undocumented workers from Mexico working in a pork processing plant were seriously injured when their car was struck by a semi. They ended up at Methodist Medical Center where they received emergency care. Both ended up with permanent disabilities of one sort or another. Allow me, though, to quote from the story. The men had insurance from jobs at one of the nation's largest pork producers, but neither had legal permission to live in the U.S., nor was it clear whether their insurance would pay for the long-term rehabilitation they needed. So Iowa Methodist Medical Center in Des Moines took matters into their own hands. After consulting with the patient's family, it quietly loaded the 2 comatose men onto a private jet that flew them back to Mexico, effectively deporting them without consulting any court or federal agency. When the men awoke, they were more than 1,800 miles away in a hospital in Veracruz on the Mexican Gulf Coast. Now, such medical repatriation is neither the first time nor the last that the wild disparities of our global economy will lead many to the intensive we don't care unit. Indeed, it is in order to escape this unit that people emigrate in the first place. This particular story came to light in part because the men and their families said they were sent south without their consent, which hospital representatives insisted was not true, and received poor rehabilitative care. From the article again, a judge dismissed the lawsuit last year, ruling that Iowa Methodist was not to blame for inadequate care in Veracruz. The court also found that even though the families of the men may not have consented to their transport to Mexico, they failed to object to it. It is hard to object when you're in a coma. I added that, sorry. An appeals court upheld the dismissal. So what does this sad tale, suffused with pathos, have to do with with COA and your graduation? Allow me to return to your mission statement. A human ecological perspective integrates knowledge from all academic disciplines and from personal experience to investigate and ultimately improve the relationships between human beings and our social and natural communities. Human ecology is not some fuzzy or touchy-feely quest for personal efficacy, but rather a willingness to look hard at our complex world. What were these 2 men, Cruz and Rodriguez Saldana, doing in Iowa? They were, to use the term from the newspaper, undocumented workers. It's not that their labor was undocumented, but rather that their immigration papers were not in order. They were, like my forebears, and surely many of yours, migrant laborers, pilgrims in search of freedom from want. Misfortune struck, and they found themselves in what one lawyer called this unregulated sort of black hole. She, and I quote, expects medical removals to increase with the implementation of healthcare reform. As the AP story notes, since it makes many more patients eligible for Medicaid, as a result, the government plans to cut payments to hospitals that care for the uninsured. The human ecology approach is essentially a systems approach, and such dramatic stories point to the need for these. After all, one can argue, as the hospitals and courts did, that poor quality medical health care in Mexico is not their responsibility. But one can argue, as these undocumented workers' employers apparently did, that there are not enough people to keep us pork-fed. And any consumers who might turn their noses up, okay, that pun was intended, at pork in favor of fresh fruits and vegetables are also dependent upon cheap labor, much of it supplied by people with names not like these gentlemen's. It would thus seem that even a cursory understanding of their complex story demands that we partner hard. One of today's graduates, you just heard, of course, now anything I say nice about Maura Brennan will seem self-serving. Maura focuses on precisely these topics and on such partnerships. Her senior project is called Exploring Healthcare Reform with Migrant Health Workers in Maine. As a COA student, Maura has listened and learned on both ends of the labor stream in which people like Cruz and Rodriguez Saldana move. Having spent time in Mexico and Maine, she sees the connections between them and our patterns of consumption. But she is, in keeping with an intellectually rigorous reading of your mission and hers, not content merely to see patterns. She is engaged with local healthcare providers in efforts to improve the quality of care for migrant farm workers here in Maine, which has required her to learn a lot more about U.S. medical care, which is itself in a parlous state if we care about value for money. Maura discerns connections and acts on them, all the while learning how to improve healthcare or to help others do so. That is what I mean by partnering hard. Now, of course, the hospital administrators arranging medical repatriation, and the AP report mentioned more than 600 such removals in the past 5 years, also see such connections and act on them. I've no doubt that they have their own versions of these stories and feel beleaguered by economic pressures which must seem beyond their control too. But there's a reason the American Medical Association's Council on Ethical and Judicial Affairs urged doctors not to, and I quote, allow hospital administrators to use their significant power and the current lack of regulations to send such vulnerable patients to other countries, especially to those with fewer resources for intensive care or rehabilitation. That would, of course, be most countries which export labor to our processing plants and vineyards and fields and farms. But I'm lucky in my partnering, as I get to work with people who are trying to get more of our patients sick and injured into an intensive We Do Care unit. As partners in health, we're often working on the other end of that stream of people in search for security in the human ecology sense of the term. That is, we work in rural Guatemala and Mexico and Haiti and Lesotho and in other places that generate labor, as these streams of aspiring and hoping humanity are termed, and try to keep them healthy or tend to their ills and injuries when they're not. It's hard work, for it requires partnerships, both local and translocal, the latter meaning that our work spans places as far-flung as rural Mexico and rural Maine. We called our nascent collective Partners in Health because, as hard as it is to partner, much less partner hard, we understood early on that a failure to partner would lead to failure. We knew this early on because we so often failed to achieve the sort of results we desired in rural Haiti and indeed in all of the places we've worked, including in this country. But partnering can yield great results too, especially if we link our efforts to the resources they deserve. So partner hard. Let me turn in closing to Haiti, our oldest neighbor, for a very different tale of medical repatriation. I am here today en route to Rwanda and then Haiti because a former student of mine, now an emergency room doctor in California, is married to a graduate of COA. You know there's always a story. Everyone at COA has a COA story. Sarah, I don't know what they're going to do without you. Liz Kahn, née Hodder, was a musician here a couple of years back when she used to rock out with a certain long-haired guitar player who will go unnamed, but who is currently the president of this college. Imagine if they'd been here in the age of YouTube. Liz Kahn is home, tending the home fires, which are, of course, solar-powered, her being a COA grad and all. But Stephen is sitting right here next to my daughter, and with, amazingly, another Elizabeth Hodder, who is a trustee of COA. How two Elizabeth Hodders could be here on Mount Desert Island and be, as they claim to, unrelated to one another is a mystery to me, much like bioluminescence. But all this lot, like my former student from Harvard Medical School, fulfill the ideal of COA, the claim that this place is for idealists with elbow grease who see the world as a complex place and for those who wish to make it a better one. That Haiti and the United States are interconnected is not subject to debate, not if we're interested in history. For 2 centuries, our nations have had difficult relations, as my new COA friends from Haiti, Nadege, Theodore, Angeline, Laurette, as you know quite well. In fact, just to welcome your families, but in part out of a mischievous desire to hear Haitian Creole spoken in every corner of Bar Harbor, I will add to your parents, compliment pour tout travail petit tuyau, m'da souhaité ou satisfait avec travail au beau ici. Speaking as an American, suffice it to say that we did not always partner hard with Haiti, although we did, alas, sometimes partner with those seeking to undermine its sovereignty. But it doesn't have to be that way, and better partnerships can and have been born. We have focused ours on building the capacity to deliver health care by building up Haitian capacity to do so. Hence the hospital I mentioned earlier, which, by the way, is the largest solar-powered hospital in the developing world today. Because people need safety nets. They need protection. There's a reason that no one injured at the finishing line of the Boston Marathon who made it to a Boston teaching hospital like the one I work at, the Brigham, there's a reason not one of them died. Now, we learned these difficult lessons on a much larger scale during the earthquake. I'm here today with Stephen Kahn because he partnered hard with Partners in Health, with Harvard Medical School, and with the Brigham and Women's Hospital. In fact, he has partnered so hard and long that we can reach into Haiti, even in the middle of an earthquake, and help the injured and sick, not by repatriating them back to a setting in which they can't be cared for properly, but by trying to struggle to provide care there in Haiti or, when necessary, in the United States. Yes, we face the same problems described in my story linking Iowa to Mexico. But the only humane way to address these mortal dramas is to help build proper systems of care, as Jesse said, in places like Haiti or Rwanda, and to train the next generation of professionals there, even as we work with students like Maura, Brennan, and others I met here last night and this morning. Among these complexities is the need to mirror our training efforts here at a place like COA or Harvard with those designed to draw on talent and desire to learn, which is abundantly present in Haiti. Think of all the young people there who might like to be doctors or nurses or engineers or designers. Stephen Kahn has been thinking of them. He and others have lifted up young Haitian physicians like Dubik Kobel and his wife, who, rendered homeless by the 2010 earthquake, began delivering care in the spontaneous refugee camp in which they and their infant daughter sought refuge. Dr. Kahn made a film about these and other Haitian doctors called Haiti's Heroes, which I recommend to you all. But the story is not over. I just saw Dr. Kobel and his wife and daughter on Wednesday at Harvard Medical School, as he is now one of the first 4 trainees in a new master's program at Harvard in global health delivery. This is not the brain drain or the labor migration described above, as Dr. Kobel is headed back to Haiti to conduct research on what happened after the quake so that we might draw lessons from the experience of providing health care and other services in the camp in which he lived and served. He would fit right in at COA. If the world is, as the saying here goes, a complex, interconnected place, you are leaving, if you dare to, this beautiful retreat and going forth into settings in which this description is deemed apt. That is, it's possible, as Thoreau noted long years ago, to imagine ourselves as disconnected or unplugged. It's tempting to see the world as our world, as simple and bounded, rather than complex and reaching back in time and across far horizons. But whether you look hard at the life burgeoning in a pond, or at labor migration, or at the injured and destitute sick, whether you get your news from the changing seasons or from the Colbert report, looking hard and looking critically reminds us that there's no honest way to deny our connectedness and our complexity. Our self-regard as a species needs to be linked to humility and love, or at least respect, for our planet and those who live on it. Partner hard, dear COA graduates, and may we meet again. Congratulations, class of 2013.
Many thanks, Paul. It has been an honor to have you here today as our commencement speaker. Clearly, your life and your work exemplify human ecology, and as such, I now have the great pleasure to present you with an honorary Master of Philosophy degree in human ecology. By the power vested in me as chairman of the Board of Trustees at College of the Atlantic, it is my great pleasure to confer upon Dr. Paul Farmer the honorary degree of Master of Philosophy in Human Ecology. His name will be joined to the distinguished group of honorary degree recipients. Thank you, Paul. We are delighted to honor your contributions to human ecology. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.